Being critical of a character who's been around too long in the world of Game of Thrones feels odd, and it feels even stranger when that figure is one of the few from House of the Dragon who's likable enough. Yet, here we are. We just can't, for the life of us, figure out how this guy is still alive. We're sure you'll relate. So let's get started. First off, how is this character still around? Listen up. We adore House of the Dragon, but we just can't help and wonder if this character ought to be long dead. There, we said it. So how did it go up until now? We should start off by saying that we like King Viserys, and at the same time, we adore House of the Dragon. It's exciting and stressful, and the characters are rendered in the same bright, skillfully done shades of grey that made Game of Thrones so captivating. No different is King Viserys. King Viserys, played by Paddy Considine, regardless of your opinion of him, should no longer be a character on the show. He ought to have hit the hay at the conclusion of episode 5. The man just should be long gone, both artistically and as a point to make this story flow better. But we're aware that we ain't no writers, so we're going to let you be the judge of things. Next up, what's happening to King Viserys? The poor gentleman is surrounded by a headstrong brother, a headstrong daughter, and many evil court dwellers who are striving to move up the power structure. Even so, he's generally made an effort to do his best. Has he made any politically unwise choices, such as getting married out of love rather than to preserve the safety of the realm? Absolutely. Even then, he has carried the weight of the throne and made every effort to solve the issues that have come his way. The fact that he is dying, though, is an issue that can't be solved. The rusty old Iron Throne that keeps poking him may be the reason why the guy is gradually losing parts of himself. Spoiler alert. One of his arms is physically withering away at the end of episode 5. This brings us to the following point. It's simply unsettling and hard to accept for King Viserys to survive the time shift of 10 years. Now, let's talk about the decade-long jump. Time advances by 10 years between House of the Dragon, episodes 5 and 6. 4 of the key characters are replaced by new actors after a significant amount of time has passed, while King Viserys continues to joyfully attend tiny council meetings as if he didn't pass out and bleed to death at his daughter's wedding a full 10 years prior. How is this a thing? While the actual cause of King Viserys' illness is unknown, a potentially fatal infection, sometimes known as the flesh-eating disease, appears to be the most plausible diagnosis. Amputation and removal of the diseased area are among the therapies, but it's emphasized that the condition can be fatal and that antibiotics are usually a component of the treatment. Yes, antibiotics are correct. Leeches, not so much. Perhaps it would have been more plausible if King Viserys had lived for a few months or perhaps years before the illness truly took a hold of him, as he did in the first part of the season. But how did he manage to survive a 10-year time leap when his arm was already falling off when we last saw him? No way. Coming up, the demise of King Viserys in episode 5 would have been ideal. Look, we understand what you're thinking. Why exactly is reality really important in a show about dragons? King Viserys might be suffering from a strange illness that behaves strangely and lengthens his life. It makes sense, but we'd argue that, from an artistic perspective, his demise at the end of episode 5 would have also made a lot more sense. He had a remarkable and moving conversation with his new hand, Lord Lyonel Strong, while his arm is being treated. It all comes down to how he will be seen. Viserys mutters, "Will I be remembered as a decent king, Lyonel?" He's concerned that when history is written, what will they say of him? He'd never engaged in battle, won a victory, or experienced a significant loss. Strong answers that some could call fortunate. His hand goes on that you've preserved the realm's might, and carried on King Jaehaerys' heritage. Isn't it preferable to live in peace than to have songs performed after your passing? The king eventually agrees that it's better not to have been tried, as the scene continues in this manner. This dialogue stands out in a series that has generally excellent writing. It perfectly captures King Viserys' struggle, a vulnerable moment in which he looks in a figurative mirror. This conversation, along with his unexpected breakdown at the conclusion of Rhaenyra's wedding, would have been the ideal ending. Now, we understand why he's still here. Look, we understand why they kept him alive. We promise, we do. The dynamic between Rhaenyra and Queen Alicent would be entirely different if Viserys had passed away before episode 6. On one level, keeping him around and letting the tensions fester makes it reasonable. Even still, we can't help but mourn the absence of a passing that would have been so exquisitely sad. Next, So is Viserys a good king or not? As king, Viserys frequently makes the wrong call. If he looked more like the character from the book, the question would be trickier. Everything linked to Viserys in the Song of Ice and Fire books is fictional history, written by characters inside the universe many years after the fact. Viserys hasn't been directly experienced as a character in any of George R.R. Martin's works. The circumstances leading up to the Dance of the Dragons are frequently disputed among the numerous sources for this fictitious history. The king himself, on the other hand, is consistently portrayed as a cheerful ruler who's beloved by great lords and commoners alike, generous with the realm's wealth, and always prepared for a feast, ball, or tournament. But he has made some messy calls in the past, so we'll let you be the judge of his kingship. Coming up, let's talk about the king's illness. It ain't looking good for the king, folks. Let's start from the top. In the first episode of House of the Dragon, we find King Viserys sitting on a chair with his shirt up and bewildered Maesters inspecting a developing sore on his back. One of the younger Maesters said, "Grand Master, it's a wound that won't heal." And that's when he suggests the use of maggots to suck the infection out and stop the rot. The wound isn't brought up again in the episode, but in episode 2, the poor old monarch is back in the Maester's chair, this time with a small finger that looks badly diseased. The king's burnt pinky is carelessly placed in a bowl of wiggling grubs by the Grand Maester, who then remarks that this is our best opportunity to salvage the digit, Your Grace. The removal of the dead tissue by the maggots should halt the spread of the rot. The Maesters aren't entirely sure why the king's health isn't the best it could be, yet there were hints present from the start. Next, so what's he genuinely struggling with? The king really tells the Maesters what he thinks might be happening in that episode 1 scene, where he is sitting with his shirt up. He shares that it's a minor cut from sitting on the throne. It's meaningless, King Viserys claims. The Maesters hardly pay attention, since he makes it seem casual while it's obviously serious. We viewers hardly pay heed either. It merely sounds like a king trying to downplay perceived weakness. Later in the story, though, something else occurs that gives his comment a fresh perspective. When the king lifts his hand to his head to dismiss his brother from the royal room, he finds a drop of blood on his little finger, the same finger that had become black with rot in episode 2. In conclusion, King Viserys was likely to correct all along. His wounds are related to the Iron Throne. According to the NHS, we're in real time now. Necrotizing fasciitis can result in blisters and black spots on the skin and may require surgery to remove the infected region. In the case of his finger, the jagged edges are probably producing cuts that are subsequently becoming infected. In a metaphorical sense, occupying the Iron Throne is like being trapped in a nightmare with merciless choices and foes. But in this instance, it appears to be murdering King Viserys one cut at a time. Lastly, how does King Viserys rule? Viewers could tell from the first episode that Rhaenyra would encounter opposition when she ascended to the throne, but it already appears that the Seven Kingdoms are in chaos. Everyone is concerned about the succession. The crab feeder poses a threat, King's Landing is either lawless or a polis state, and Viserys and Rhaenyra already have a tense relationship. And that's the Targaryen dynasty at its height. The Dance of the Dragons and other instances is a prime example of Viserys' failure as a ruler. As king, his personality and abilities set the tone for his court, where all of the chaos is happening, and his choices have a big impact. He could have added some much-needed gray to the situation if he had a little more political savvy and short-term peacemaking prowess. That's a wrap. Let us know in the comments below what you think of the king's disease and monarchy so far. Hit like and click that subscribe button, and we will be back with another video. Bye!